Hello everyone. I am about to perform a demo for you on how to create a value scale. As you can see, I've got a pretty notched up ruler. It's not a beautiful one. You want to make sure you're careful when you select your rulers for this project. I'm going to go ahead and proceed with this because the ruler's not perfect, but I don't need but 7 inches of the ruler. Okay, so I don't need anything from here back, so that's where it starts to really get ugly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a value scale that is 7 inches long, and we're going to do about an 1 inch square for each value. So the easiest way I can tell you to do this, if you have a good ruler, is to start at the 7 inch mark. And then I would trace around the edges. And I would stop here again at the 7 inch mark. Now everywhere there's an inch increment, I'm going to make a little mark. I'm not going to make a mark that's too big because I don't want to have to erase that much stuff when I'm done. So the bigger the mark I make, the darker I make it, the more I'm going to have to erase. Now I'm going to come around, make sure I'm on my good end of my ruler here, and I'm going to start closing these boxes off. Okay, we got one more here on the end. All right. I'm going to go ahead, close this up. If you notice, this right here is my ugly end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that the darkest end. And that'll save me some trouble later on. So I want to erase all the stuff I don't need. All right, this is my value scale. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from darkest all the way to lightest. I want each square to get a little lighter until it gets to absolute white. So this square is going to be completely black. This square is going to be completely white. And then they're going to incrementally change to get darker and darker or lighter and lighter depending on which way I'm looking at my scale. All right. So like I said before, this square turned out the ugliest. It's got all these boogers and things in it. I'm going to go ahead and make that my darkest square. And something I want to show you guys, if I hold my pencil straight up and down, I have a little bitty mark that I can make each pass I make with my pencil. But if I turn my pencil sideways, then I increase that mark that I can make by quite a bit. So I'm going to turn my pencil, I'm going to hold my pencil on its side, and I'm going to start doing it like this, and try to get down as much value as I can. Now on the darker one, the darkest one here, I may not be able to hold this all the way till the end. I may have to go ahead and turn my pencil up for the darkest one, just so I can get a darker value on here. But for all the other ones, I should be able to turn my pencil sideways and make a lot more ground, get a very smooth shading inside here, and that's what we're looking for. We want these to be almost perfect. So I'm going to speed up here, and that way you don't have to watch me do the entire thing. Okay, in many ways the darkest one is the easiest one, because all I want to make sure is I get these really rich dark values and that everything's pretty well the same, and that's easier to do with the darkest one. Alright, now I want to move on. This one needs to be lighter than this one, but darker than this one when it's complete. So I want to come and incrementally make this just a little bit lighter. Not much. So right now I'm a lot lighter, and that's not going to cut it, right? So I'm going to have to make several passes on this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to need to turn my pencil up a little and get it much darker, but I just want to show you guys something here real quick. So let me see if I can focus in on this. All right, and get it where the light doesn't affect my video. So you see a really dark spot right there, and then you see a really light spot, and you see another light spot, you see a dark spot, a dark spot, a dark spot, and a medium spot. I want all this to be one value, so I'm going to selectively color around the darkest spots because they are dark enough. I don't want to get any darker than the darkest spots. I may even end up having to pull some value back off, so we'll just have to see. Alright, so that's what you'll see me doing here, is selectively coloring around my darkest spots. Alright, so now we have this all pretty well one value. There are a few little places I could get really nitpicky about and just kind of pick through them and make sure there's no white spots and no spots that are too dark or too light. But for the most part, it's all one value. This is a pretty good shaded square here. You'll notice it is dark, but it is not as dark as this one. And that's what we want, just a little bit darker. And then this one's just going to get a little bit darker. A little bit lighter. So this one's going to get a little bit lighter than that one, not much. This one's going to be a little bit. This one's going to be a little bit lighter than that one, but not much. And it's just going to successively go on until we get to white. Some people prefer to go from the lightest. So they'll try to make the lightest possible gray they can and get darker and darker. I recommend for new students that you go from darkest to light, but you can do whatever is most comfortable for you, because really there is no right or wrong way. It's just when you start with the darkest first, it tends to eliminate some problems for new students. One thing you want to do too is make sure your desk is clean underneath your paper. You see how I picked up a really dark spot right there? That's just because there was some kind of booger or something underneath my paper, and it made my lead go down, more of my lead come off on the paper. Okay, so we want to be careful of that. But one thing I can throw out there, you can do the same technique with this that you did with your mirrored project. Remember when I showed you how to fix your coloring? You can do the same thing on here. If you're coloring and you get some weird inconsistencies, you may try shading it a different way and see if that gets rid of it. If it doesn't get rid of everything, then you need to come back over it and color around each individual anomaly like I showed you on this square. Okay, a little bit darker, needs to be much more dark. Somewhere in between. This right now is about what this one needs to be. So we'll try to darken it up a little without darkening it up too much. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and color around any of these dark spots because they're dark enough. And when I'm done, I hope to end up with something as dark as my darkest spots. And I hope that is not any darker. I hope it's a little bit lighter than that one right there. So that's what I'm going to shoot for. That's what I'm going to aim for. Doesn't mean I'm going to get it, but that's what I'm trying for. Nobody's perfect. Expect to make mistakes in this, but do try to correct those mistakes. and try to learn from your mistakes. So I'll speed this up again. Okay, I think that's pretty well good. We've got a little corner here of lightness that I've got to get rid of. See, notice how I'm just coloring around all those dark spots. I'm avoiding all of the dark spots because if I accidentally get more lead on them, they'll just get even darker. Okay, so we have to color around them. Now, there's a spot over here I got a little too dark. One way I can do that is I can take my eraser and I can roll it across. You see how that lightened that area up? Not much, but a little. And that's what we're looking for. And it maybe made it a little too light. So I got to go back very, very lightly and fill that back in. But it's better than it being too dark because now I can correct it and make it perfect. All right. I'm going to move on to my next square. So I'm going to try to do these on fast forward. Alright, I had to stop to sharpen my pencil. That's important because I want to maintain the length of that lead and I want a nice, even, consistent layer of value. So this is going to be the most tricky one. So the darkest one might have been the easiest. This one's going to be the trickiest. Okay? So I have to be very, very light. See, even just very light pressure might turn really, really dark. You can do this if you're in class. What I recommend is you switch to a different pencil. Okay, what I recommend you do on a light value like this is if you're in class, switch to a different pencil, or if you have a different, if you have a pencil set, a set of drawing pencils, go ahead and get one with a high number H beside it. So this one is an HB, it's in between. You can get the value that you need out of an HB pencil. You just got to be very, very tender. But look at this one, very, very light. And I've got some eraser smudges that are kind of dark on here. I'm going to have to try and fix those later. But see, I'm getting this very, very light value. You can barely distinguish between right here on this laser line and here, where I've went and where I haven't went yet. So I'm being very tender with this, and I've also got a very hard lead, and that means that not much lead is going to come off on the paper. Alright, so I got a dark spot right here. I'm going to roll my eraser over it again. Get my shavings off of here, or my eraser. Just to kind of prove a point, I'll use my darker pencil right here. I'll just be very, very careful not to lay down hardly any lead with it. Just to show you it can be done. You can get these very light values with a darker pencil. You just have to be very gentle with it. I usually only use one pencil, two pencils maybe for a drawing, because I don't like to switch back and forth. I just apply different amounts of pressure. Okay. So there we have a pretty even value scale. We've got some issues like right here and here that show up in the camera. They don't really show up as much on the paper itself, but you know, I'll try to fix it according to the way it looks on the camera. So I'm just touching it. I'm just tapping it with my eraser. I can roll my eraser across it. I can just tap it, but I'm not doing that eraser motion that we're so used to because I don't want to take off too much value. I'm not trying to take off a bunch and then come back and add more and then realize I added too much and then take back some more. I'm trying to get it right in one pass, right? Work harder, or work smarter, not harder. Don't work harder, work smarter. Words are hard. Okay, so there we go. That looks really good on the paper. Let me check the camera. It doesn't look great on the camera. Let's see if I can still fix some of these issues that are showing up on the camera. The camera has so much more contrast, right? You know, we're in the camera wars with all of these different phone manufacturers, and they all want to say they've got the best camera, so they punch up the contrast on the image. Remember, we were talking about that a few classes ago. A little more contrast makes an image look better, makes art look better. So these camera manufacturers, they know that. And so they bump up the contrast in the software so that you will think that you've got the best camera of any phone in the universe, right? Which, you know, the phones do have excellent cameras now. But there's also some cheating going on with the contrast, but that's good. Whatever gets you better pictures. Most people don't know how to use Photoshop and edit their pictures to get perfect contrast, so if your phone can do it for you, great. That's awesome. I think that's a good thing. All right, so we go from absolute pristine white to a very, very pale gray, to a pale gray, to a medium gray, to a dark gray, to a darker gray, to a rich black. And if I wanted to get really crazy, I can also switch pencils and get like a 6B or an 8B or something like that and really make this just absolutely black, like a black hole, okay? So I could do that. I'm not going to bother with it. You guys probably won't have access to that stuff unless you're in class. So if you do, fantastic. If you have your own set or if you're coming to class, great. Feel free to use those supplies. But if you don't, do what you have to do. You can make a perfectly good value scale with just one value. With one pencil, not with one value. So I just want to get an even, consistent value all the way in each square. One value in each square, successively getting darker. One being perfectly white and pristine, and the other one being very rich and dark and black, right? Really nice. Okay, so that's what we're going for. Now, I have been using my hand on this. Once again, I could have put my paper underneath my hand and kept these smudges off. That maybe something you want to do because I don't want any smudges on here. Try to avoid your smudges because that changes your values. And it makes your work look trashy. So if you're in college, that'll actually take off your grade if you get smudges on your value scale. So try to avoid that at all possible. Another thing I'll do, I got to be careful when I brush my eraser dust off not to get too much of my oil on here. So if you have a brush, an eraser brush, that's great. You brush it off, or you see me going sometimes. But you see how I smear my drawing, but I also put my oil on here. So one thing you may be tempted to do, and I'm going to go ahead and do this because I don't need a value scale laying around. I'm not going to save this forever and cherish it. So I'll go ahead and ruin it. And that is, I may be tempted to take my finger and kind of smooth out my value scale with my finger, right? Ooh, now I'm tricking Mr. Jones. He'll think I'm really good at art. Okay, so here's what happens when you do that. Your oil from your finger gets on there. And the issue that causes is then your pencil lead goes on consistently. So you see how I'm getting these really dark spots in some places and not as much in others? It's because my oil from my finger is stopping my lead from going on. And you can cause some real issues trying to shade. So do not try to blend. Once you blend with your finger, you can never go back and shade again, most likely. There may be a possibility of it, but most likely you won't be able to. It's just ruined. Okay. Now, one thing you can do, if you want to do the blending thing, okay, you can take a piece of paper and blend. Okay, and that doesn't have any oil off your hand on it. And so that should be just fine. But you do take the tooth off your paper, so you still might get some inconsistencies because you're smashing some of those little bumps and stuff on your paper down. But it will give you a nice smooth finish when you're done. You just have to kind of clean up your edges when you're done because it'll tend to smear. And then finally, if you were doing a work of art and you wanted it to last a million years because you're a famous artist, rubbing your oils from your finger on there, there's acid in that and it'll eat the paper away. So I never can recommend that you try to blend with your finger. It's the most natural thing to do for some of you. I'm sure it's right there. It's attached to your body. Why not? But it just is not a good idea. You'd be better off folding up a sheet of paper into a corner, or a twist, and using that. They actually make a blending nub like that where you roll up. They have kind of compressed paper or rolled paper, and they call them tortillas or blending nubs. And you can definitely use those. I'll show you one real quick, what one looks like. I have some here. But like I said, I don't use them. Once you become really good at art, it actually slows you down to try and cheat. So I can just shade things right the first time, and then I don't have to worry about coming back and trying to blend it with my tortilla. But you see how I get that smooth shading? To me, it takes longer to do this than just to do it right, though, because I have to do it once, and then I have to come back over it again and try and fudge it and fix it. But you can, some of you might be into this. This might be your thing. All right, pretty smooth, right? So if you're needing that smooth look, I like a little texture to mine. That's fine. If you don't, everybody is a little different. This is a tortilla. This will be on your ACP, actually. I don't even know why we teach students about these, but we do. So it's important. It's on your test. All right, so that's a value scale. This is what we're looking for. Remember, clean up all your smudges when you're done, because we want this to be very pristine and pretty and nice, and try to get all your erasing off. All right, there we go. Voila, magnifique.